very weak muscles. So the ones that I've mentioned on your little sheet might be the opponens pollicis, one of your thumb pad muscles that opposes it. Okay? Your flexor digitorum superficialis or sublimis, which is one of your extrinsic muscles, but it flexes your digits. Your extensor indicis, which extends your index finger. You have a lot of little muscles here in your forearm that you may need to specifically. I don't want all my finger and wrist extensors because they're innervated by different nerves, so I may want to just get that one, or just get that one, or just get that one. Okay, so I have to know what muscle I'm going for because I'm looking then for that action and know. Now, at this point, y'all don't have a whole lot of that knowledge. Some of those muscles may sound familiar to you, but where they're at, not so much, okay? This is a motor point chart. We're going to assume, for today anyway, that you're innervated. So it's a muscle we're trying to stimulate, but via the nerve, because it's an innervated. You've had some weakness or injury, but it's not denervated. The nerve has not been destroyed, okay? So the best place to stimulate that muscle is going to be on the motor end plate, where the nerve is attaching onto the muscle. I can look at charts like this and have an idea of where those motor end plates are. And you can find these in different books. This is always supposedly kept on this cart. And so you just look, this is the muscle I'm wanting. That should be about the area. But most of our bodies haven't read the chart, and so it may be slightly different. So part of our technique will be to find where we get the best response with the least amount of current, and then we'll treat. Okay? Because the very small localized muscle we're going for, we're not doing a big bipolar setup. We're using a probe to very specifically find and treat that muscle. Okay? There's different heads that will go on this probe. This is kind of a medium size. This is a larger head. And this is a pinpoint head, which is more acupressure kind of thing. So you can change, you just unscrew and screw back on. You can change the head of that. But this is going to be my active electrode. And then I'm going to use a dispersive electrode that's at least 2 to 3 times bigger. Like I said, more is better typically on these. So they don't feel anything here. Current's going to be going between these two, but this is the only place they're going to feel. Okay? So, got 2 electrodes. I've got the size that I want for each of those. This will be a monopolar setup. Okay? One small active, one large dispersive, even though it's AC and the current switching between the two. All right? So here's my unit. I've got it plugged in. I have 2 lead wires, black and red. It doesn't matter black and red because I'm doing AC. Okay? So for AC, it doesn't matter. Now, DC we'll talk about a little bit later of how it would be different. But for AC, it doesn't matter. So I can plug one into the probe and one into the disperser. Okay? Then I need to finish preparing my electrodes. Okay? For this one, all I need is some wet gauze on top of it. I don't want to put the bare metal on the patient, not the most comfortable. I want to conduct that electricity, not zap the crud out of them. So I put wet gauze on top of there. This is way big. I wish I had a smaller rubber band, but anyway. And then just rubber banded them. Okay, but I want to make sure my gauze isn't hanging down and touching, because whenever that gauze touches, it's going to stimulate. I want it just to be. Okay. For this one, here's my electrode. I've got the sponge carrier, which I have wet, and you want it thoroughly wet but not dripping. I mean, if you're going to err on the side of too much water than not enough so that it conducts, but you don't want it dripping everywhere. Warm water's nicer and conducts a little bit better, but it cools off pretty quickly, so this will feel pretty cold to whoever our guinea pig is. And then because we reuse this for hygiene, I'm going to use a wet gauze on top of it. I'm just covering the sponge on the patient. This is going to go on my motor point, or close thereabouts. This is going to go on some close by body part, but not antagonistic. So if I'm working on the finger flexors here, I don't want to put it here. I can put it up on their upper arm, I can put it on their shoulder. I don't want to put it on their leg because this is going to be a circuit between the two. And I don't want it traveling through their body any more than they have to. Okay? This doesn't stick on or anything. I'm going to be holding this on, so then you use little Velcro straps to hold the dispersive pad on. Okay, so we'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about our buttons on the machine. You've got the on-off power switch here on the side. When you do so, certain things will default. It will automatically go to narrow pulse, and I guess that's the only one that it automatically goes to. Here's our time, just like it was on the other one, but this one has a timer bypass, which unless you know how long it's going to take you, timer bypass works better because instead of a time counting down, once you hit go, it counts up every 2 seconds. So it'll go until I turn it off. Okay? For this one, I'm going to have to find my point, get my appropriate intensity, and then treat. And for this, instead of treating for a period of time, I'm going to get 3 to 5 good contractions once I get everything set. I don't know how long it's going to take me. So I usually do timer bypass, then I don't have to worry about getting everything set and then time out and I'm starting over. Okay? Here are current choices. Now basically the first 4 are going to be the ones you're going to be initially concentrating on. The first 3 buttons say narrow pulse, wide pulse, and AC, and you've got pictures of this unit in your packets or whatever online. All 3 of those though are AC. They just have slightly different pulse widths, and according to the manufacturer, and I can't give you a physiological reasoning behind it, but according to the manufacturer, the smaller muscles for narrow pulse, medium size wide pulse, and your bigger muscles AC. They're all AC. That's what they recommend. Now our narrow pulse button is not functioning correctly. So it doesn't become a choice. For us, that's where it defaults, but it's really not working. So we have to choose wide pulse or AC. But that's our AC choices. If you choose those, it's continuous, wide pulse or AC. Okay? DC is your 4th button, and it is a continuous DC. So when we do iontophoresis, that's what we're going to use. If this were denervated tissue, that's what we're going to use. And then we turn it on and off with our switch hook.
So if you choose the DC, does it still not matter how you plug those in?
Good question. If we choose the DC, it does matter. Not so much from positive or negative polarity for muscle re-ed, but this is really tiny, so you definitely don't want it negative. You want the negative bigger than positive, and so I put the red in here. Okay? Now those are all continuous. We don't want to treat with continuous because we're doing muscle re-ed. This is a small particular muscle re-ed. So you want what mode? Interrupted surge. Okay? I'm going to use continuous to find my point and find my intensity, and then switch it over to surge to treat. Okay? So I can have surge plus one of these other ACs, and I'll show you how to choose your rate in that as well. Okay? The bottom button just says reverse polarity. Doesn't make any difference with AC because it's constantly reversing polarity. But if I chose DC, and for some reason I have plugged them in wrong, instead of unplugging them and replugging them, I hit reverse polarity, and then positive is negative and negative is positive.
So if you hit surge in one of the ACs, it's surge continuous?
It is interrupted surge.
If you hit surge.
If you hit
Otherwise,
surge.
these are
Continuous. If you hit surge, this automatically goes to an interrupted surge, and it's on for 6 seconds, off for 18. So it gives you that 3-to-1 ratio. That's the only choice it gives you.
But you can modify that to match the actual muscle's contraction.
Correct. It's only the on for 6, off for 18 if you do the interrupted surge on here. Okay? This knob is your pulse frequency, which is your rate. Okay? It goes from 1 pulse per second to 83. If I'm doing muscle re-ed, what's my range? 20 to 50, depending on how size and how strong. Okay? This is for a small, weak muscle usually if I'm doing this monopolar. So we're probably going to be on the lower end. Okay? This is only for continuous AC though. When I get to surge, and I'll show it to you when we get there, when I get to surge, up here it will display F83, F35. It only gives you 2 rate choices for surge. So you choose the one that's appropriate for that, 35 or 83. You just make sure. So when I'm on AC first, continuous, finding my spot, I want to make sure my rate is as close to what I'm going to treat as possible so that I'm not finding it on a rate of 83 and then switching over to a different rate. My intensity may be different. So put your rate close to where you know it's gonna be on surge, which 32 is as close as you get to a 35 that's there. Okay, when I go to surge, this knob doesn't mean anything because it takes over with the rate choices, and DC continuous doesn't have a rate, it's just on. Okay, so once I get everything set up, get my pads in place, then I hit go and turn it up. This is a little bit older unit. Most of the newer units now, it won't let you go if it's turned up, and this one won't either in that regard, but it won't start counting down if you left your intensity up. It makes you turn the intensity all the way down, and then it'll go and you turn it back up. Okay, so you can kind of follow along in your handouts if you want to with this procedure. It's not a hard procedure, it's just a step by step by step by step. So who's going to be my guinea pig?
Whatever.
Crystal wants to. Crystal, change places with Jason.
All right, you can do Watson. I'm sorry.